Imagine we get to the point where you can no longer be sure that what you're seeing is real. Right now, it's pretty easy because of all the glass in our lives. Think of the phones, laptops, iPads, monitors. All of these screens enable you to interface with 2D images, like me. Sometimes they're great and sometimes they suck. It normally depends on which app you're using and by which company. But it can also be down to things like notifications, your expectations, a blue light, even a noisy reminder. Now think about this and amplify it by another dimension. So you might have heard of a little company called Meta.
Meta.
Rebranding themselves to Meta.
What actually is the metaverse?
Let's back up a bit. Hey, what's up? I'm Ollie Effers. So right now, startups and big tech are competing in the race for your attention. But there's two very different directions when it comes to virtual reality. One is very corporate-led. They think about how you can substitute an office in its current form for 8 hours a day and sit alongside avatars of your colleagues behind a few virtual desktop screens. Sound familiar? The other direction is much more bottom-up because it's built by people that are interested in the scope of possibilities that virtual reality can give us. So on one hand, you have a single business-led metaverse with a closed ecosystem. And on the other hand, you have a bunch of startups contributing to what their interpretations of many metaverses will look like. But what about us? Regular people. What problems can a virtual world actually solve for you and me? Or is it all a visual substitute to replace the mundane? Virtual reality right now is a look into what the future holds, imitating somewhat of a Ready Player One lifestyle. You wake up, put your VR contact lenses in while you make breakfast, get your regular morning updates, which you reply to with your voice. If you then go and boot up the latest RPG or first-person shooter, you're probably in for a great time because it's adding another layer of immersion to something that you actually want to be immersed in. But what about for everything else? Meeting a friend, going to work, playing sport or traveling. So with what already seems to be like an agreed future for us and the undoubted trajectory of the VR industry, I wanted to ask the question of, are we even ready for it? And what are the benefits of replacing real? Okay, so what are the problems that this will solve for the average user? Well, the reason that we're headed in this direction for VR is in the hope that things will just become so much more convenient when you can teleport to another location in an instant, like work, for example. But the benefit here isn't in instantly talking to people without an office, because I can already do that on Slack and Zoom, with the added advantage of not having to be constantly available at a moment's notice for every question or overheard discussion. It's also not in actually meeting people, because we don't only go to meet someone to see their 3D self. It's for the fresh air on the way, the sounds of others around, or the smell of coffee at a cafe, even the haptic feedback from things like shaking a hand or eating a cookie. So then you could ask yourself, why does gaming exist, right? Because we can do that for hours at a time without a care in the world. It's fun and it's sociable. Well, context matters. And I see a lot of people and companies trying to merge these two worlds. Gaming is so broad that most people will probably be able to find some entertainment in at least one game during their lifetimes. This isn't really the case for work because most people are doing it out of necessity. Probably everyone. And in the majority of cases, unless you really love what you do, you'll likely want to just finish the day and enjoy your time off. So by replacing what's normally pretty dull, like an office environment, with a virtual one, it's a bit of a Trojan horse and just another way to interface with the same people over the same tasks. I'm saying this in relation to the current job landscape, by the way. I know this might change in the future as our jobs do through the advancements of things like AI. I've got a whole video on the impact of AI in design, if you'd like to check that one out. There'll be less reliance on our brains to solve problems in their entirety through current conventional methods. So if anything, I can see this being quite a bit more distracting because instead of having your divided attention, these companies will have your complete, undivided, peripheral attention. That means you'll never miss a reminder, a notification, or even an advert again. Imagine ads that could pause if you close your eyes. Oh, this could all create positive reinforcement loops. So if you thought phones were bad, so is it all doom and gloom? I mean, why are people so excited for this? Have our lives become so mundane that we just feel the need to replace every moment with a more exciting one? I don't think so. Right now it feels like a lot of the tech is being pushed to make us feel like it's a necessity as opposed to it being useful. Don't get me wrong, some of this stuff is really, really cool, like for cinema or gaming, education, or even exploration purposes. I've seen demos where people travel back in time to understand Roman history better, or examples of all the pieces in a fully assembled car bursting out into a floating deconstruction that then has to be reconstructed for an engineering class. Very cool stuff. Immersion in this sense should make education vastly more interesting for a lot of students, and as a result, more beneficial. Where I don't really see VR taking off is as a complete replacement for our environments. Like if you go on a walk and you want to replace the fields and trees with maybe a cyberpunk inspired city. Where I see this being really useful is perhaps in shorter bursts, like a blend between the two, but only after you've consciously activated the tech. Consciously. I wouldn't want to be sitting on a bus looking out the window at a virtual information card describing maybe a building, when suddenly the entire scene changes to display maybe a different location or even an advert. People should always know what's real regarding what they're looking at, I think. Otherwise, there's too much room for manipulation if this isn't the case. You've probably seen episodes of sci-fi fantasy shows depict this type of thing where people don't actually know that they're in a simulation, and they are. So what I mean by a blend is a lot more like augmented reality. So like a little extra layer on top of reality, but without replacing it. Two great examples that I can think of for this that solve real world problems are actually navigational. So when you use maps, for example, right now you look down at your phone, it takes a few seconds and you need to figure out the direction. Well, if you augment reality here a little bit, you can imagine looking down a street and maybe seeing a giant pointing arrow in the direction that you need to go in. Or if you're in a store and you want to find something specific, you can be directed with ease. Imagine travel. Replacing a trip to another country with a virtual experience of it sounds like the exact opposite reason to take the trip in the first place. So yeah, when we're asking the question of whether or not we're ready to replace the real, I don't think we'll ever be. But in some areas, in short bursts, there's great utility. And I'd love to hear what you think. So I'm asking you all the question of, do you think that we're ready to replace the real, and why? I'd love to hear it down in the comment section. Right, so I tried something a little bit different with this video, but I still think it could be of great use to people in the design space. So if you enjoyed this video, you can give it a like or subscribe to the channel. If you want more of this content, you can follow me on Twitter @Ephisopoulos. And yeah, I want to say a big thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.